I'm back. I think the internet cut out at my location, and so I think you lost me or I lost you. But I want to spend a few more minutes then discussing another aspect or a way in which we could look at Parsha Devarim and the ones that follow, because they're all part of a great Kedusha discourse. A discourse that applies to when there is a great conjunction between heaven and earth. We are starting a new year. Today is the first day of the biblical new year, spelled out in Exodus chapter 12. And I want us to begin to rebuild the counterculture. I believe it's imperative that at this particular stage in time, as the world around us grows darker and darker and more dangerous, and humanity goes to levels of depravity that we've never even seen before, not least in our lifetimes, and the end of days probably is getting nearer, then we need to begin to reestablish on earth the counterculture the creator of the universe desired to build. And so therefore I'm going to give you some ideas, maybe discuss with you as folks sitting around a table would in discussion about how we might look at all this information, this download of revelation and wisdom from heaven that has to do with clean and unclean and holy and unholy and abomination versus perfection and the king's ways of looking at things. I want to suggest to you a hermeneutic, a way of interpretation, a way of approach toward these things that we're going to be reading and or have just read in the Torah. From Parsha Tazria, then we'll Metzora, then it goes on through the rest of the Kedusha discourse, all the way almost to the end of Leviticus. I want to suggest to you a hermeneutic. That is to read and meditate upon every instruction of this discourse, this long discourse, through certain lenses of other scriptures. In other words, if you want to, before you start reading it, think back to these scriptures, or at least let these be consciously in the back of your mind before you read any of these instructions. For instance, about the Tazria, who gives birth, the male child, the Zachor, the female child, the Nekabah, or the Hava, Eve reproduction syndrome. Before you get into that, what if you stopped and meditated on these passages? And I'm going to give you three of them from the book of Deuteronomy, all from Deuteronomy, and Moshe's explanation, the great prophet himself's explanation of how the words that he has been able to record for us from the Torah, especially of the tabernacle season, apply. Now in Deuteronomy 4:6, Moshe said regarding these instructions to the people of Bnei Israel, this is your wisdom. This is your wisdom. And it is your understanding in the sight of the people who will hear all these statutes and say, surely this great nation is a wise and understanding people. Hermeneutic lens number one through which to look at, perhaps you would wish to look at all the mitzvot, all the instructions of the korbanot, holiness discourse that we find in the book of Leviticus, what I call the ultimate extreme bridal makeover protocol. Hermeneutic number one would be to understand this is wisdom we're reading. This is spirit to spirit communication. This is heaven words, heaven vocabulary, heaven messaging that may bypass our brain, may bypass our logic and our reasoning, certainly will bypass our cultural, ethnocentric, ideological framework that we know. It is deeper than that. It is better than that. It is wiser than that. So think, number one is what we're about to read when you read each instruction, or what you have just read when you have just read an instruction from the Kedusha discourse, is this is pure wisdom. Now, if you look at it differently, if you think of it that way. Not only is it wisdom, but it's understanding of what makes life work. Wisdom and understanding. Moshe said, this is your wisdom and it is your understanding. It is proof that you know how things work and how things fit together and how the great plan can be brought to bear upon situations. It's bigger than how you feel at a given moment. It's bigger than what you're thinking about whether this is right or wrong or moral or immoral or just or unjust. It is instead what is necessary to bring the ecosystem back under the management of the creator of the universe and not let the flesh rule it. and not let the animal parts of humanity control the nephesh, the mind, the will and emotions, the pseudo-intellect, all these things that are of the earth that we are supposed to infuse with holiness, infuse with Kedusha energy, not tell Kedusha where to go and where to stick it. This is your wisdom and your understanding. Hermeneutic number one. And it is to be for the sight of the people of the nations. We are not doing this so that we can go to heaven when we die. We're not doing this so we can get some sort of reward or blessing upon the earth. We're doing this because this is our calling to be an example and a model to the nations of divine, pure wisdom and true understanding of what life is really all about. So that's hermeneutic number one, that this is wisdom and this is our understanding. And this is for the sake of the people of the nations. Now the second thing, the second hermeneutic that I would suggest to you is from Deuteronomy 29:29. This is a passage you will recognize when I say it. It says this: the secret things belong to the Holy One, our God. The secret things, ha nistarot, those things which are hidden or we cannot touch in our minds. Our minds cannot really conceive or see. Our eyes cannot see. The secret things, ha nistarot, belong to the Holy One, our God. But there's a caveat. But, in other words, there are some things you will read that you will not comprehend or understand. There are some things you will read in the instructions that you cannot literally fulfill in your flesh. That these are still spirit-to-spirit communications. The secret things belong to the Holy One. They're not a passe. They are not some sort of a obsolete or a primitive way of looking at life by primitive man. These are divine wisdom, but some things we cannot yet conceive or perceive. But they are still wisdom, and they are still of the Holy One. So secret things belong to the Holy One, our God, but those things which are revealed. Okay, and now we're getting down to it. There are certain things, like for instance about the Tazria, or about what happens whenever someone has this swelling or this spot where the hairs turn white on their skin, or where there's an indentation. Now there's a change in the level. There's an imbalance of the level of the skin, manifesting some problem of imbalance inside with anger, with negative thoughts and negative speech coming out of our mouths, negative behavior. That is adversely affecting our environment and our families and our lives and our world and our testimonies and our witnesses. Well, these things are when those things are spoken, we need to pay very close attention to what is revealed. But those things that are revealed, hanigalot in the Hebrew, belong to us. They are something for us. And to our children forever. This is not going to go away when Messiah comes or Christ comes. This is not going to go away whenever the resurrection or the ascension or the release of the Holy Spirit comes. This is forever. This is our God. Those things which are revealed belong to us and to our children forever, in order that we may build, do, make all the words of this Torah. So the first hermeneutic is that this is our wisdom and our understanding, and it is for the nations. The second thing is that the secret is just part. When we get to a secret thing area where we can't do something or can't figure out what it means, we let it belong to the Holy One. We meditate on it. And the second thing, part of that corollary, is that that's what is revealed. That which we can do, we will do. Now there's another hermeneutic. The third hermeneutic comes from Deuteronomy 32. 46 through 47. Deuteronomy 32, 46 through 47. I'm going to suggest this third hermeneutic to you. Third way of looking at and approaching these instructions from the Kedusha discourse, from Tazria, Metzora, and beyond. Here's what it says in Deuteronomy 32, 46, 47. Moshe is speaking after delivering this message. He says, set your hearts on all the words that I testify. Set your hearts on all the words that I, Moshe, testify among you today, which you are to enjoin your children to be careful to observe. Set your hearts on them and enjoin your children to be careful to observe all the words of this Torah. For these are not an idle word or an idle thing for you. This is not just information floating around the atmosphere. This is not just a few ancient, sacred text coming from a religion and a people, an ethnocentric group. Sorry. It is not just that. These are not idle words for you. These are your life. These are Chaim. Now, this is The other hermeneutic is that this is your life. Whenever you read this, this is about life abundantly. This is about how to make the best of life. This is your life, Chaim. And by this word, you will prolong your days. I could talk about whether or not you want your long days prolonged. But for the sake of the nations, for the sake of the world, if we're here as the counterculture designing to model tikkun, or fixing the world and bring it back into shalom and balance and healing and health, then we should want to prolong our days upon you in the land which you are crossing over the Jordan to possess. Now, with all that being said, I'll shorthand it. Try this, consider at least trying this counterculture approach to the Kedusha discourse. Number one, do what you can. When you read it, do what you can do of it. If you don't have a temple, if you don't have a Aaronic priest to go to, then you don't have everything, but do what you can do. Look for what you can look for. Think about what you can engage in of what he has said, and realizing this is all going to be real to you again in the future. Every aspect of it will happen in the Messianic kingdom. This has not gone away. It didn't disappear. This is real, and it is the plan for the Messianic kingdom and the restoration of all things. So do what you can of what he has said, what the Holy One, our God, has said. Even if you can't do it all. Do it to the best of your ability. Do the best of your understanding. Search it out. Seek the kingdom in it, and do what you can. Second, perhaps, counterculture approach to the ideas based on these hermeneutics would be, second, even the things you can't do, especially the things you can't do, but especially even the things that you can't do for whatever reason now, meditate on them and formulate prayers to the Holy One. Have discussions with the Holy One in your prayer times about the deeper things that you cannot now do, and what they mean and what they're for. And ask him to give you applications, and looking around in your world for applications of imagery and metaphor and ways in which you can bring to bear the wisdom and the kedusha, the energy of heaven into these situations that follow the pattern that is set and described in the Torah. Remember, this is spirit to spirit communication. This is not flesh communication. All right, I want to go a little bit further. The next thing I want to talk to you about generally, as we have these fireside chats here, is to remind you, or to at least acknowledge with you, that there are presently extant in the world, you've heard them, there are common, I'm going to call them blasphemies. I don't mean to be disrespectful of those who hold them, but I just consider them, there's no real question, these are blasphemies about the Kedusha code, or about Torah in general. It's common blasphemies of the Kedusha code and or of Torah in general. Now, number one, blasphemy number one that you have probably heard, or considered maybe in your own fleshly mind, your pseudo-intellect. Number one is, these laws are obsolete. They're just relics of a primitive time long ago. Our society has advanced beyond them now. And so these are of historical value only. Whatever it says in the book of Leviticus, or maybe even Numbers or Deuteronomy, that was the then, this is for now. We have our own ways of doing things. So they're of historical value only, and they have no present or future application whatever. This is the first main common blasphemy of the code. I presume you've heard it. I presume you might have even from time to time in your worst, darkest moments even thought it. But if the word of the Holy One is sure, if the Holy One himself is holy and eternal, then his words are holy and eternal as well. They do not become obsolete. Now, the folly of the idea that somehow the things that the Holy One said back in the book of Leviticus or Numbers or Deuteronomy are obsolete, and that they are relics of a primitive time, long past, that's ludicrous enough. But the fact that they say society has advanced beyond these things now. We have science and medicine. Oh, look around you at what society has done. Look around you at what medicine and science and philosophy and ideology and ethnocentricity has done to your world. That is not advancing, beloved. That is such a ludicrous, blasphemous statement that somehow that God is absence in the world. God's Absence of his self and his words from the world has made it a better place. It has made it the hellhole that it is right now. And that's what will always happen. And yes, his words are real, they are eternal, they are constantly active and vibrant, they have meanings at levels of spirituality well beyond the human ability, no matter how educated or intellectual he thinks he is, to understand, and therefore they have present and future application as they are given by heaven. So the first blasphemy, I hope you will give a second thought, another thought to that, and not just let it be said in your mind or around you without checking your spirit to say, is that even possibly correct? No, it's not. Second blasphemy, the common blasphemy of the Kedusha code and Torah in general, is that it comes more from the Jewish side. Because there is no temple now, and no functioning Aaronic priesthood now in place during this age in which we live, and things like skin diseases, leprosy, that is not a thing anymore in our communities, we cannot literally fulfill these instructions or mitzvot, so they just don't apply to us at all. That is blasphemy number 2. There is always a temple, we just can't always see it. There is always a place where heaven's touching earth, and where the Kedusha energy of holiness is being released upon human beings in their flesh, and we just are ignorant of it. Because of our ignorance, we do not see what's going on. But unfortunately for us, we lose out whenever we miss seeing it. It's like the Yacovian experience, Jacob's experience with the dream and what is often called Jacob's ladder, but this staircase that ascends. In his dream, he was able to see it. That there's always constantly flowing movement between heaven and earth on this staircase. Angels bringing things down, taking things up. There's always interaction, intercourse between heaven and earth, and that blasphemy that somehow the temple and the functioning Aaronic priesthood's not here. We can't do everything, so therefore we just ignore it. That's a second blasphemy. The third blasphemy is more common, probably something you're probably very familiar with. It's often called replacement theology, but here it goes. Father, you could say it this way. The third blasphemy of the Kedusha discourse and the Torah in general is that now Jesus has come. He has fulfilled every one of the laws of that unenlightened old covenant, and he has substituted a new and a better covenant. Whatever feels good, do it covenant. Whatever seems right in your own eyes covenant. Or at least a basic be moral person plus do the sacraments covenant. And you will note that some passages in English, of the English translations, of the Greek Testament writings of Shaul, Paul, and some of the other writers of the New Testament, as it's called, read out of their Hebraic context and only in English, but not in the original languages, do seem to support that. So they quote those regularly to say that Jesus came and he fulfilled every one of these laws. That old unenlightened old covenant that failed has been done away with. It wasn't a good one, and so he substituted a new and a better one. And basically it is, it's whatever feels good, do it. It's whatever seems right in your own eyes, do it. And if you want to get really technical, it is be a moral person and do the sacraments that the church calls you to do. And you're good. Well, you don't fulfill your purpose, but anyway. So what happens? What is the result of these, particularly this third blasphemy of the Kedusha discourse and its instructions for how to live and incorporate holiness into ordinary human life and the Torah in general? The first thing is that the Kedusha code, the blasphemy is that the Kedusha code of Torah is abolished. And now just anything, in other words, the basic thing is, don't do anything I wouldn't do, as friends tend to say in joking as people leave their presence. Don't do anything I wouldn't do. That's sort of the kind of a concept of what now is in place as opposed to the Kedusha code. The second thing is that what happens as a result of this blasphemy is that the light to the nations and salt to the earth focus that Torah tells us is our purpose on earth, it gets replaced totally by the obsession over going to heaven when you die. Everything becomes obsessed about whether or not a person is going to go to. If you died today, would you die? Would you go to heaven or would you go to hell? That becomes the total obsession of everything, as opposed to purpose while you're living upon the earth. And so the next thing happens is that certain things get replaced. Mikvah, the idea of periodically having this self-cleansing process where you immerse yourself in the water, gets replaced by a one-time Christian baptism concept. Secondly, the korbanot protocols, the things of drawing near to the Holy One, protocols and disciplines and patterns of drawing near to the Holy One and dealing with various deep holes in your soul, get replaced by a program system of giving to your local church. Money, cash, silver, properties, giving to your local church or giving to a parachurch ministry or donating to a charity or a charitable organization or institution. That becomes the substitute for that. Well, there are other substitutions, but I think you'll be able to see. I want, as we go forward in this era, as the world around us gets dark, consider there's a possibility that maybe the Kedusha discourse and all the instructions about Kedusha versus kol, the common versus the profane, and the holy versus the common, the profane, and between the clean and the unclean, the tahor versus the tameh, and between the abomination, the to'eba, and the perfection, the tamam, these things might be of extreme importance to us if we could begin to spirit communicate again with our King, with the Holy One. Now, I would tell you we've got a few things we could talk about. I want to kind of move on to an issue that deals with what the Proverbs say might be sources of tameh. Areas in which we tend to have imbalance come into our lives, where hormones or chemicals or emotions begin to flare up, and we begin to get out of balance in ways that cause destruction. It's like a machine that gets out of balance and begins to go and not in its usual path and begin to intersect with other things. A toy, a top that's wound up and allowed to just crash into everything around it. That is what happens when you enter into tuma or tumeh, uncleanness, in this process. So I want to kind of talk about Proverbs 6 and the issue there. The writer of Proverbs, Solomon as he's called in English, said these 6 things the Holy One hates or decisively esteems lowly in comparison with his holy things. And the 7 are an abomination to him, or a to'abah to him. And the first one is a proud look. So now we're getting into the issue of what causes tuma. There's the issue of how you think and how you feel about yourself, arrogance, stubbornness, a proud look. That's the first one. A lying tongue. Okay, what comes out of your mouth is what's going to cause this abomination, this zara'at, or this skin infestation, or this tumah, this uncleanness to enter in the world. A proud look, the way in which you think of yourself and self-talk and consider yourself, your self-image, your self-esteem with itself. And then you're lying, when the tongue speaks that which it does not know or which it knows to be false, the lying tongue, the tongue of sheker, the tongue of deception is spoken. Whenever you don't control your speech and say only what you've heard the Holy One speak and know. And the third thing is hands that shed innocent blood. So we're now going from an attitude, an approach, to a speech, to hands that shed innocent blood. Now we're talking about behavior, interactions with other human beings. And now not following the humility and the gentleness and the mercy and the kindness attributes of the Holy One, but shedding innocent blood because we can. And then he goes forward, the fourth one, a heart that devises wicked plans. Allow itself to meditate and think about things. You know, it's one thing to have a thought cross your mind. It's another thing to dwell on that thought and let its darkness consume you. To run it out to its worst case scenario, or to think about things in such a way that you obsess over the wickedness of the darkness of how things might happen. The fifth thing is that feet that are swift in running to to that which is deconstructive of the ecosystem, that which is calamitous, causes havoc, or wreaks any kind of negativity in the earth. Feet that are swift to do that. The sixth thing is a false witness, one who speaks sheker, who we had a lying tongue earlier. Now we're talking about the witness himself, the one who actually speaks lies. Talking about the way in which you become a vessel of falsehood. Have you become a vessel of falsehood? This is unclean. This is the form of uncleanness. And then one who sows discord among brethren. I think this one is sort of the culmination of all of them, the seventh one who sows discord among brethren. This is the ultimate sign in our day of someone being out of balance. They sow discord among brethren, among friends, among associates, among nations, among ethnic. This is the one who sows discord. That is like the zara'at, the mark of uncleanness that is erupting and spewing forth. That if we could see it now, this is what it looks like in our world today. Now, if we want to go into critical clues, I want to talk about what Yeshua said. Yeshua's teaching is about this, and Yeshua's teachings about the uncleanness aspect of things is this. These things, devarim, which proceed out of your mouth. Those things, I should say, devarim, those things which proceed out of the mouth come from the heart. This is what the Master taught. Those things which proceed out of the mouth come from the heart, and they defile. They make unclean. They make tumei, a man's. Now we're seeing that the applications of these things, Yeshua is teaching us about applying the Kedusha discourse to activities in life, things that we have to do about how we're going to speak. For out of the heart, he said, proceed, English, you're going to read evil thoughts. Dialogismos poneros in Greek. Literally in English, in Hebrew kind of concept, Hebrew English concept would be a raw, danger, negativity, ecosystem corrupting self-talk or meditation. For out of the heart proceeds that. And then murders, acts of violence, acts of abuse, acts of vengeance, adulteries, fornications, which is the Greek word porneia, which we get pornography from, or porneia is sexual obsession. Out of the mind, out of the heart proceeds porneia, sexual obsession. And it also precedes thefts, taking things that are wanting things, corrupting things that you want that other people have, thinking you should have them. False witness, pseudo-martyrio. That's the Hebrew to speak. Again, we're back to what was Proverbs said, the false witness. And blasphemies. Well, I've given you 3 blasphemies just of the Kedusha discourse and the Holy One's message to humanity that I've referenced earlier. And blasphemies come out of the heart that is defiled. And these are the things, Yeshua said. These are the things that defile, corrupt, to make tamei a man. Align him with the kol, the ra, the tamei, the zara'at, and the to'eba, as opposed to the tov, and the kadosh, and the tahor, and the tamam. Well, I hope we've given you some clues, some food for thought. I hope you will be able to interpret the instructions, the beautiful instructions of Tazria and Mesorah and the subsequent parshas of Torah here with a new mindset, a new heart, and with new hermeneutics and with a new approach. We are called to be a counterculture. We need to be that counterculture again. And the only way we can do that is through following the Holy One's words, seeing them as our wisdom and our understanding and life for us and for the world. Amen.